Yeah, I don't worry about the macro that much. Fed hike, Fed meetings. That's somebody else's job. That's why I try to keep portfolio balanced, longs and shorts and things like that. If I started betting on Fed outcomes, it'd be a different thing than what I am. There's some people who want to be everything to everybody. I'm comfortable just doing what I'm good at. Knowing what I'm good at and sticking to it. Which is, I'm a company analyzer and just only in a few sectors. And for a long time, I wouldn't even look outside of biopharma. So I was too scared going outside my expertise. All right. Okay, 252, 106. Let's see how revenue growth was in Q1. Revenue growth is 34%. So again, like if you look at those three numbers in sequential order, you can't divine that growth is accelerating or growth is slowing. So the first derivative is positive, right? You have revenue growth. But the question really is not about revenue growth. The question is about the second derivative, which is what is the rate of change of that revenue growth. And again, the temptation is anytime you see a down sequential, and I'm really speaking for myself here. I mean, maybe other people can avoid this emotional construct. But for me, the temptation is to look at that, any sequential deceleration of the second derivative and say, oh boy, growth is slowing, it's all over for Atlassian or whatever. And in the early days of my career, I thought it was all over for Google or Facebook or whatever when I saw that second derivative slow. And again, next quarter you just see it pick up again. Or stay the same, and you'd be mystified because you naively thought that the growth was slowing. And again, this comes from the so-called law of large numbers. It's easy to grow 40%, for example. Take a look at this. When your revenue is only 460 million a quarter, which is big, but then how do you grow that 40% as you start to think about, okay, well now the revenue I'm trying to grow is 600 million, and maybe the quarter's down here. Your revenue year over year is, okay, with 700 million, so to grow that 40% is harder because I have to add so much more revenue. And you get to a point where you can't grow 40% forever in a compounded way. But the reality is that's not the right way to look at it. You have to sort of look at what part of the TAM have they kind of captured when you think about the target acquisition or target addressable market. If they haven't really even scrape the surface of the TAM, or they're creating, more importantly, they're sort of creating a brand new TAM that haven't even been thought of before. That's the kind of thing that, sort of just changes that whole law of large numbers BS. So the law of large numbers is maybe the worst way to look at this kind of stuff, and it's kind of the worst, heuristic ever sort of used in finance. Done more damage than lots of other ones. All right, so let's do one more quarter here. We'll have 2 full years of financials. So this was 6/30/21, 6/30/2020, and then I'll throw this in GitHub for anybody interested. Perpetual license and other interesting. They changed the way they report. They used to probably have perpetual licenses, and perpetual licenses model has sort of died in software. It used to be how some companies sold software, including Oracle and others. It's a very old school way of selling software. Now it's all subscription, which I think some people like. I think the enterprise clients like that. Okay. Pretty clean financials. I mean, the other line is a little fucked up, but that's pretty typical, I would say. Be curious focus on some of the rev rec stuff. Deferred revenue is a lot sometimes to software accounting and revenue recognition. That's kind of tricky. Well, let's look real quick at the other growth rate. So there it is again, right? 30%. You might think, oh man, the growth is done for Atlassian. Then boom, 34%, 37%. It's like, well, what made the growth accelerate? Could it have been a new product? Could it have been a change in selling strategy? It's probably just the TAM getting filled out. And I think people who are very financially literally minded, they often will not see the forest for the trees. You have to go out there and actually talk to users. You have to go to the user conferences. You have to really get a sense for what the heck is happening out there in the real world and match it with the financials, and don't take either one too seriously. You have to take a look at cloud, right? Their cloud growth is the fastest with the most year-over-year kind of burden of that large number. So it looks like they haven't been reporting by divisions like cloud and so forth. They just started doing that, it looks like, which is fine. Their choice, right? But it's interesting they're now segmenting their business that way. So next quarter we'll see how they refer to cloud. So cash flow, very important. Let's see how they did on that side. All right, 184, 367. So ignoring CapEx for a second, oops. The last 8 quarters of cash flow, they averaged 202, so that's, call it 800 annualized. But the last 4 quarters of cash flow, they averaged 209 as well. So it's 209 and 195. So cash flow itself maybe hasn't grown that much, which is a little concerning. Again, it's okay to reinvest in your business, and if you actually cut this R&D line, say, in half, let's see. Well, that's where cash flow is. Hold on. Maybe you could bump this 100 million, maybe 200 million. So yeah, I call it $1 billion. Just thinking out loud here. Sort of 20 times revenue. A little less than 20 times revenue, but the margins are so good. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty good long. I'm not going to come up with an exact number right now for what the stock is worth or what the company's worth. It's going to take some more time to mentally kind of think that through, but that's a start of Atlassian.